Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'd. Ahabati fillah. I wanted to talk about something of great importance, and which is good information for those who may not be aware of not just the importance of depending upon the ulama, but also with regards to the issue of fatawa, issuing religious verdicts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says في كتابه الكريم فاسأل أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون. Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. Meaning about those masail, those issues which you don't know regarding the religion, regarding Islam, you should ask those people who know, ask the scholars, or ask those who are more knowledgeable than you, or those you feel most comfortable with because they have knowledge, they have something of knowledge. Because we're not all in the same position where we're able to reach scholars, and nor are the people on the same level. Likewise, scholars are not on the same level. So there may be some masail, some issues that are fairly basic issues that you can ask someone, a student of knowledge. You can ask someone in your local community who has some knowledge. Maybe they've studied a bit, maybe they read a lot, and they know some of these basic issues, and you ask them. But depending on the mas'ala, the issue is going to depend upon who you ask. So those things which require a fatwa, require a major religious verdict with regards to something is major. For example, how to deal with the coronavirus. Dealing with specific issues regarding the salat in jama'ah, salat al-jumu'ah, things like this. Those are major masail that require either a fatwa from the major scholars, or at least someone who has scholarship and they have studied those masail. Meaning those masail, in one form or another, can be deduced from the books of fiqh. So the person should have familiarity with the books of fiqh and the aqwal of the ulama, and perhaps the aqwal of the different madahib and their adillah. So perhaps they can find a fatwa that's already been issued with evidences regarding the same mas'ala. But in general, because this is a new virus, and we're in a contemporary setting with various contemporary issues that we're dealing with, contemporary political systems, contemporary ways of having to deal with even the issue itself, the sickness itself, then that requires, with regards to some of those masail fiqhiyya about the Jumu'ah and things like this, that requires going to the major scholars, because they not only have the ilm and the fiqh, the understanding, but they are not just qualified to deal with these masail, but they likewise can take responsibility for those things. Whereas if you are not a scholar, and especially not from major scholars, or depending on your level of knowledge, you may be taking a responsibility which you are not asked to take on, or it could be perhaps sinful, especially if you have the ability to go to those who are more knowledgeable. And so I wanted to, in fact, not just talk about that issue, but I wanted to mention the importance of being patient when you are seeking fatwa, when you're seeking an answer from a scholar or even a student, even if it's not a major mas'ala. And I recall in one of our durus, one of our series of lessons with Sheikh Saeed bin Halal Ash-Shamri, hafidhullah ta'ala, in Hail, and we were somewhat one of the Shabab, because this was during the time of the beginning of Iraq war fighting, and about a lot of Saudi youth were going away for jihad, or what they thought was jihad, and they were, and this was the time of before ISIS, the Al-Qaeda era, you could say. And a lot of them came back influenced by that ideology, and left even with that ideology. So that was the big thing at that time. And I remember one of the students of knowledge in the gathering with the sheikh, he asked, he said, "Sheikh, how come the scholars don't open the door to jihad, or how come they don't, give us an answer quickly about this and that and the other, and some of these major masail?" And the sheikh answered it beautifully with exactly that. Because these masail, when you come to contemporary issues, and they take darasa, the scholars have to look at it from as many angles as they can. And there's a responsibility with that. And that requires taqwallah azza wa jal. And it requires ilm wa fiqh, that they have to study the mas'ala, especially when it's something new and contemporary, what they refer to as fiqh nawazil, meaning those the fiqh in the jurisprudence of contemporary issues, new issues that didn't happen in the history, in world history. And now, so the scholars, especially those who have itqan in ilm, they're grounded in ilm, la yastajilun, they don't rush to make a verdict. So you have to be patient. You have to be patient. Something happens and people want answers within 30 minutes, within 1 week, within this. But these issues, when it comes to major masail of halal and haram, whether to participate or not to participate and what have you, they require darasa. And this goes back to a qaida, a principle, a fiqh principle, that is perhaps related to usul al-fiqh or qawaid fiqhiyya, which is a principle which means الحكم على الشيء فرع على تصوره أو كما قيل. A ruling on something, or a part of ruling, making a ruling or a judgment, requires, necessitates that you have knowledge about that. Knowledge about it, and you have a good picture of it. You have a good picture of it. Let's give you a mithal. Let's give an example. For example, if a scholar is asked about something, or let's talk about a person, because I've talked about this issue before. For example, the scholars, we say, hey, Sheikh, we're calling a Sheikh in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, whatever, Mauritania, doesn't matter. And we say, Sheikh, we have a man here, his name is, the people refer to him as Sheikh so-and-so, but he's Ashari, or he's this, or he has such and such, or he calls for this elections, he seems to work with the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, whatever the case may be. Okay? So you're calling a scholar way across the oceans, about an individual in your locality here in Seattle, Washington, for example, Washington State. And you have a responsibility in how you give a wasf and how you describe that situation and that individual. You have to give good, correct background. And the sheikh also has a responsibility to not be quick and just give a hukum, but he has to have a good tasawwur. That's what it means. He has to have a good image of really what's going on. So what is wrong with this individual, for example, if it is indeed true and if it is indeed a mistake, those are two different issues. It needs to be presented correctly to the sheikh. And the sheikh should not be hasty if he's fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the utmost fear, to just issue a judgment because a hukum ala shay far'un ala tasawwuri, because a ruling upon something, part of a ruling upon something is that you have a good picture of it, a good image of it, of the truth. You understand the situation, so then you can give a ruling. That's why it takes honesty on the part of the people asking the question, and it takes a type of honesty from the scholar. And what we've seen over the years, ahabati fillah, regarding this specific issue that's caused fitna and fawda, I recall some scholars that are known to be scholars of Ahlul Sunnah, but this is no doubt a naqs. And I myself don't feel comfortable going to scholars like that, because I know so many scholars who don't fall into those traps. Even mashayikh that I ask, most of them, even if they know me and trust me, they still reply with a type of skepticism, or they say, if it is as you say. So that's a disqualifier. So they know me for years, but still he says, if this situation is as you say, then my ruling is this. Letting us know he's not directly talking about this individual if what is being said about him is untruth. And we've seen situations, subhanAllah, especially younger scholars, and I'm talking about younger scholars from Yemen, younger scholars from Saudi and stuff, but you don't see this from the major scholars, and I'm just going to tell you that. That's why I'm saying the scholars tafawut, they have different levels, and we can't be shy about this. We have to let you know, for those who don't know this, because some of the scholars, and this is kind of what this issue of, now we're getting off track, but we're going to give you a bigger picture. This issue, for those who are aware of the Saafiqah and all of these statements that have, and these kind of movements and discord, one of the key issues, and why even some of the scholars of Ahlul Sunnah have gotten into that, is because there is a reality of people building up people who should not be built up as major scholars and going back to. So a part of that situation was, let's go ahead and give some names. Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi, this is from my understanding, he said about certain scholars who really, to me, they're unknown, but they're, known in certain circles in Medina because they're younger graduates with PhDs from Sudan and this and that one and that one. And he referred to them as Saafiqah. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. My point is, because the people began to build them up and say that they were, refer their affairs back to Allama so-and-so. And we've seen it over the years. So many scholars that were not Allama, but they became Allama just because because they agreed with the people. They agreed and they gave them the kind of fatwa they wanted. That's not a criterion for being a scholar or something, but rather it's ilm wa fiqh wa bayan wa khibra wa basira. It's not hawa. So what happens, and we have this all over the world, it's not in the West, it's not unique to the East, because the Arabs do it, they do it in everywhere, and it's done in the West as well. For example, we have du'at, everybody wants to be a sheikh, sheikh so-and-so. Well, sheikh so-and-so may or may not even study, and that's just the reality. Some of the people call sheikh. That's why it's better to be humble, and especially if you know your position with regards to ilm, that you shouldn't accept those kind of things, or at least try to try to put it in check, because there are some people with regards to their people, yes, they might be a sheikh in their level, but that does not mean they are qualified to make fatwa. That doesn't mean they're qualified for this and that and the other. So it's very important for us to know our position, and this comes from an athar of the Salaf. I think it's Ali ibn Abi Talib. So Rahimallah man yarif qadrihi or kama qil. He said, may Allah have mercy upon the one who knows his level, he knows his ability. You know, he doesn't go outside of it. He doesn't let the people build him up, so then he's set up for a fall and a fail. So this is very serious, to have this idea about scholarship and about making judgment and fatwa, being patient with Ahl al-Ilm and knowing who Ahl al-Ilm is and knowing the levels of the people. That only comes from study and mixing in the circles of Ahl al-Ilm wa Ahl al-Fiqh wa Basira. And we ask of Allah the Almighty to accept our good and forgive our evil, and forgive us of our many, many sins, and help us, bless us all with ikhlas, with thabat ala sunnah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.